Good evening. I'd like to welcome each and every one of you. I'd like to call this August 6, 2020 workshop and special call board meeting of the Board of Trustees for the San Felipe de Oro CISD. This meeting will be conducted by video conference in accordance with the governor's authorization concerning suspension of certain open meeting law requirements for COVID-19 coronavirus disaster. Madam Secretary, would you do us the honor of calling roll?
Mr. Contreras? Mr. Mesa?
Here.
Mr. Overfelt? Mr. Smith? Ms. Guanajuato Webb? Ms. Haynes?
Here. Mr.
And myself.
Is not here. Amy is
So we
here.
have a quorum.
Dr. Ruiz, is Mr. Overfeld going to join us?
I'm sorry, am I muted? No, yes. He is going to join us. And Mr. Contreras did, both Mr. Smith and Mr. Contreras communicated earlier that they would not be joining us.
Okay. Just for the record, Mr. Overfeld will be joining our meeting shortly. We will start again with opening ceremonies. Just want to say that for the record, we do have a quorum of board members, and this meeting has been duly called in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551. We'll have opening ceremonies, first with a moment of silence for personal reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and we do have Mr. Overfelt already on. First item that we have is again item 3 on the agenda, school board workshop. Budget workshop, we'll turn it over to Amy Childress.
Mr. Mesa, I'll start off the workshop. First, we have a representative from Brown Insurance. They are going to make the presentation on our health fund. After that, we're going to turn it over to Ms. Childress, who will then take us through a budget presentation as well as a workbook update. And finally, we'll have Ms. Garcia come and give us the personnel report as it relates to the budget. So at this time, Willard, please make sure that I'm the host. And if you will let our guest in, we can begin with the presentation on our insurance. Okay, let me see if I see the. So, Willard, I don't see our host anywhere. Is he waiting to be allowed into the meeting?
Dr. Rose, I'm calling Mr. Coldway to see if he's still in the waiting room, and he hasn't responded. So I'll keep trying.
I don't see him. I don't see him in the waiting room at all. So
I'll keep trying for right now, but we did send him the code for the link to access the meeting.
okay, Mr. Mesa, in that case, if it's okay with you, we'll come back to the health insurance update, and we'll have Amy Childress make the presentation. So Ms. Garcia, if you can have Ms. Childress come forward to the presenter's room, I'll call up the presentation.
Sure, that'll be great. For the sake of time, it's best to do that.
Okay, Ms. Childress, I'm going to bring up the PowerPoint presentation that we worked on today. And you can begin when you're ready, Ms. Childress.
Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. This evening, we'd like to review with you a revenue update. The last time we discussed revenue calculations was back at the first budget workshop back in June. So we would like to just review some information with you at this time. The first slide that you see is a information that was given to you through a board update over the weekend. And on this calculation, it shows that based on the calculation we first provided in June, and with the information that we had at the time in July, we would be receiving a net increase of $653,616. Since that calculation, we've continued to review the information that we've had, and there have been some changes that we would like to go over with you at this time. So just to review, back in 1819, our M&O tax rate was $1.04. At that time, we did a TRE swap where we moved 0.11598 of our INS pennies up into our M&O tax rate in order to generate more state funding. So for 1819, we had an M&O tax rate of 1.1598. House Bill 3 came into effect for the starting fiscal year 1920. And in doing so, it compressed the maximum compression rate to 0.093 cents, therefore changing our tax rate for 1920 to $1.617. For the second part of the biennial year, 2021, the maximum compression rate is being further compressed to maximum rate of 0.9164 cents. However, it is being further compressed for districts whose property tax values increase more than 4% based on an estimated statewide increase. Due to that effect, our district is continuing a compression on our maximum compressed tax rate of 0.8610 due to our increase in property values of almost a little over 11% in comparison to our 2019 taxable values. Therefore, that sets our M&O tax rate for 2020-21 at 0.9927. Also, upon submitting calculations to our consultants, Moat Casey, for further review, we found an incorrect value identified in the calculation that the state comptroller uses to calculate state funding. The prior revenue that we had given you in June, the calculations used a lower taxable property value, also known as our T2 value, because that was the information and the values that we had at that time from our appraisal district. Now that we have the updated property values, and the increase to the T2 value is needed in order to be able to calculate our summary of finance, and it now results in a reduction of state funding. It results in a significant increase in property values, 11.7%, and with additional tax rate compression, they result now in a net decrease from the June revenue that we had originally proposed of $3,369,410. And just as a side note, compared to our 1920 revenue that we're expected to receive, it is a decrease of $3.7 million.
Mr. Mesa, members of the board, before we go on to the next slide, that's that's probably the most significant information, because we can look at what we budget for this year, and if we say, we'll keep all the spending the same, well, beyond that, we still have to decrease our spending by $3.7 million from last year, and that's all based to House Bill 3 and how they're compressing the tax rate. But it sounds very bleak right now, but we're prepared to offer a solution. So if Amy can help us and continue with the presentation.
I have a question before we go on. Amy, these are not certified values, correct?
That is correct. Our appraisal district provided us with estimated preliminary values. They have not certified these values due to the number of protests that they still have, and they are not seeing, the protests have requested in-person protests, and they're not having those at this time. So we will not really have the complete certified values until probably January, when they certify them with the state.
Yes. With the information that we have, that my understanding was that property values went up by 7%. And so there's a lot of protests. People have filed for protests. They're being handled at a slow pace. My question then would be, if and when these values do change, because some protests are being accepted, some are not, are being denied. And so at the very end, when they're all done, where would be the adjustments?
The adjustments would come in the state funding. They will take the values that are certified by the comptroller in late January, early February. So once the state comptroller certifies the values, those will be the values that will actually be used to settle up our state funding. So if we do happen to have a decrease in property values, and that brings our T2 value down, then we should see a possible increase in state funding. But we won't know that till after January, February.
Mr. Mesa?
So again, there's so many things that are unknown. Then the number that we have is the number that we worked with last year.
No, sir.
No.
The number of property values that was provided as an estimate by the Val Verde County Appraisal District, it's a very, what I want to say, a solid halfway point between what's being challenged and what the property values were before. I very seriously doubt that the calculations that the appraisal district did are going to be too far off, just because they have an experience in just seeing how the property values fluctuate and what's usually awarded. One of the big protesters is from the wind farm, and they've dealt with that scenario before. And I think Ms. Childers can correct me, but when Bashidi submitted the estimated appraisal values, she accounted for a halfway point in some of the challenges. So I think it's a very safe bet, and I don't think we're going to see too much increase or decrease in taxes that are collected and state funding that is provided. The biggest change in our property values was the increase because of the pipelines that go through our district, and those aren't being challenged. So that's why I doubt that our property values are going to decrease enough to increase our tax rate and increase our state funding.
I guess with everything that's going on, I just think of one thing after another because property values went up. We submitted a resolution, and I mentioned to you that as a side note, we'll talk about that resolution, but later on. But to me, I'm thinking already that it's the wrong time for appraisal values, although we have nothing to do with that. And people losing jobs during this uncertainty that we're going through, this pandemic, that there'll be any property owners that will not be able to pay their taxes, and foreclosures will be coming as a result of them losing their jobs and so forth. But those will be, I guess, for years to come, that will not affect this year at all. Correct?
Correct. This year, the funding is already in place. Now, the collection of the local taxes, that is also a significant portion of our budget. We've calculated the same collection rate as before. So that might have some effect should people not be able to pay their taxes. But in terms of state aid, it will not have an effect this current year.
We still maintain the 95% collection rate.
Well, that's we budgeted for the same collection rate as last year, which we usually budget at, remind me, Amy, is that 96 or 98%?
98.
98%.
That's not a 1 year. It's that involves several years, right?
Well, no, it's for the county turns over the money as it's being collected. They make how often do they make the payments to the school district, Amy?
They make payments monthly.
Monthly. So the tax collections are for this year. And so the property tax bills will go up probably in November, and we expect that money to keep coming in. That could be affected because we're just assuming that the property owners locally will be able to meet their tax notes.
Okay. I won't ask any more questions. Okay.
Mr. Mesa,
Yes.
I just had one quick one on the previous page, Miss Amy, when you were talking about the T2 values. I was a little confused. You said the state comptroller messed up on the calculations, and that's what's dinging us pretty hard.
No, sir. It's just when we were in June, when we were calculating, we were using the values that we had received from the appraisal district at that time.
Uh-huh.
And then in July, we received an updated version. And so I just meant that the values that the state comptroller will use to certify will be from the July
Okay.
or further values.
Okay.
That was our calculation. It's just in the change from the values as they increased from June to July.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So on this slide, administration has put together some proposals in order to offset the reduction in the revenue. One of those is that we will be receiving INS funds this year. We will be proposing to set a tax rate at 0.057 cents. And so we will therefore also garner some state funding And so we have, we can move some of our bond debt payments down from M&O General Fund down to the INS, about $1 million. We also, at this time, believe we have some leeway in salaries, in the budgeted salaries of about $500,000 that we could reduce from our general fund. We also have, that would leave about $255,000 reduction in substitutes that we could do at this time to help offset. And also we have the option at this time, we believe, for the return to work stipend and for the one-to-one remote instruction devices we have put in the technology area to actually be possibly funded out of our fund balance. Just a note, our 1920 expenditure budget at this time is $106 million. Current and our prior suggestions was that the district hold a 3-month hold worth of expenditures in our fund balance, which at this time we do have. It's $25.9 million, but new first ratings that are coming out starting in the 2021 fiscal year are only requiring 75 days, which would put us at $21.8 million. So at this time, we do have about $4 million in available fund balance that we could utilize if we chose to.
Mr. Mesa, members of the board, want to add one major comment. The budget's not going to be approved for another 2 weeks. Ms. Childress and her staff working with HR are still working on a personnel budget because it's just so big, and they have to do what they call scrub the budget and identify all the potential savings. It is possible that at the end of the day, we can further reduce the budget that's being proposed for this coming year and be able to pay for the return to work stipend that we're recommending from local funds. It's also possible that because of the current purchase that we're going to discuss later on in the meeting for one-to-one devices, we can forego buying additional laptops this coming year and therefore not touch fund balance at all. Now, obviously, we're presenting a very safe scenario for everyone today, for all the board members. But depending on the board's wishes, we don't have to touch fund balance if we're able to further scrub down the personnel budget and save another close to $1 million and not buy any more one-to-one devices. But that's just, these are just our suggestions and recommendations.
Dr. Rios.
Yes, sir.
I somewhat worry when we have 75 days instead of the regular 90 days, 3-month fund balance available. When did the 7-day or 75 days new amount come into play?
Ms. Childers, you're the one that keeps up with the first ratings. Was there a specific update that came out recently that I'm not able to recall or quote right now?
Yes, they put out, so it will be effective for the fiscal year 2021, which is the year we're fixing to start. So it will come out on the 21-22 first report, but it will be for the activity of the fiscal year 2020-2021. And just as a side note, our preliminary first report just came out today, and we are at 115 days cash in hold, just to let you know.
So we're pretty good right now.
Yes.
I just, I don't know, I'd like to always have that extra cushion there. We don't know the coming years, there's going to be a huge financial fallout because of all the money's not coming into different areas, and so I'm somewhat worried. I wish we could do something else in regard to not touching the fund balance and leaving it for 3 months. That's my opinion.
Mr. Mesa, members of the board, like I said, if we give our CFO and her staff working with HR a couple more weeks, like I said, we can possibly come up with the funds to provide the return to work stipend from local funds. And because of the purchase that we just did with this year's budget, the current year budget, we wouldn't necessarily have to buy any additional devices. Of course, it's always safe to buy some, but I think that my recommendation is that if we had to, we would be just fine, given the ones that we've ordered, and that would hold us off for the year, just to see how we can further reduce the budget during the coming year. But I'm sure that before we ask y'all to vote on the budget, we'll give you an update that clearly indicates what money we were able to save in personnel, either positions that we didn't hire or positions that got filled by people with less years experience. But we probably need another 10 to 12 days to get that done.
And Dr. Rios, just so you don't misunderstand, I'm all for the one-to-one devices. We don't know how long this thing is going to last, but I just, again, I don't feel comfortable with the 75 days instead of the 3 months fund balance amount. That's all.
We understand, and we're right there with you, Mr. Mesa. We'd like to have as comfortable a fund balance as we can, but we also want to make sure that we are ready to fulfill our primary mission, which is teaching and learning. But again, I feel very confident that in another 10 days, we'll have a much clearer picture, and can then at that point clearly recommend one way or the other. And if there's anything left above the 3 months and we can dedicate that to technology, then we'll absolutely recommend that. But what we're presenting to you today is just where we're at today, and we just think that moving forward, it'll just get a little bit better and hopefully not have to touch fund balance.
I'm going to ask the other board members, do you have any other questions at this point? Because I know that some board members have asked about the return to work stipend.
Mr. Mesa.
Mr. Orfeld?
Yeah, no, question, I'd be interested, I guess I'll save them to the end of this, if there's more, because I know there was an expenditure we were looking at that I said probably, in my opinion, didn't need, that could go to technology as opposed to what we were looking at or towards return to work stipends in that case. So I'll hold mine till the end of the presentation, sir.
Okay. I can't see everybody's picture here. So if anybody else has a question, would you speak up? Anyone else? Okay, no questions.
To Mr. Overflow's point, we have Mr. Coldaway in the waiting room. So after this presentation, which I think Ms. Childers is done with it, I'm going to flip back to the health insurance, and then I'm going to come back to Amy Childers so that she can present the workbook that addresses some of what Mr. Overfeld was suggesting. Is that okay, Mr. Mesa?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so
Mr. Mesa,
Yes.
I just want to add that I agree with you on the 90 days. I would rather have the 90 days instead of the 75. And as far as the return to work stipend, that is for what reason? To motivate people to come back, or as an incentive for them to return to work? Yes, sir.
Dr. Rios?
Ms. Webb, because we're expecting shortfalls in the coming year beyond what we're already seeing in our district, the state cut our funding by $3.5 million. That's what we're seeing today. But we expect that the state is going to further reduce funding across the board next year. Because we're expecting the state to do that, we cannot commit to a salary increase this year that then we will be required to fund next year. Therefore, the recommendation from administration was that we provide, in lieu of a salary increase to our staff, a return to work stipend, but only for teachers and all other employees below a teacher pay grade, paraprofessionals, for example. That means that 100% of administration would not receive a return to work stipend. Only teachers, auxiliary, paraprofessionals. With the understanding that next year, if we do see a decrease in funding, we would not give a return to work stipend next year. So this return to work stipend is just in lieu of a salary increase.
So, correct me if I'm wrong then, on our worksheet that we got, it had a 2% increase or 1.7% increase. So the 1,000 return to work would replace the 2% increase? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, on the worksheet, and Ms. Childers will go over it in a little bit after we visit with Mr. Coldaway. But in the worksheet, we do have the options that were presented by TASB. But the only option for everyone to select is the total cost of the return to work stipend. Now, $1,000 return to work stipend for teachers equates to 1.7% from the midpoint. So that means that for all auxiliary and all paraprofessional, they would receive a return to work stipend equal to 1.7% of their yearly salary. So that's why that figure is there, ma'am. Okay. Can I let in our guest, Mr. Mesa, and transition to the insurance presentation? Okay, let me let in our guest. I'm sorry. There's two people with the same name waiting, so I'm gonna let the first one in and see if that person's the one. He's connecting, so he should be in shortly. Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Coldaway. There's two of you, so can you hear me just fine?
Yeah, I can. I had logged in on both computers, so let me log out of one. Hope it doesn't kill us both. Okay, should just be one now.
Okay, Mr. Mesa, members of the board, this is Mr. Coldaway from Brown Insurance. They've been our consultants now going on 3 years. And this is the annual presentation he's going to give to the board. Mr. Coldaway, I have two documents that you shared with me. Do you want me to call up the table first, or do you want me to call up your memo?
The memo, I think, is what's most important. It incorporates and summarizes the spreadsheets, so probably the best option.
Okay, so let me share that screen really quick.
Welcome, Mr. Coldaway.
Good afternoon.
So there's the memo, sir, and I will navigate to the appropriate places you want me to navigate to.
Okay. Okay, so so thank you guys for the opportunity to share with you this evening that the health plan has been running fine for the last 2 years. We've had really good success from a service standpoint from our provider, which is Aetna. The cost does increase over time, and it has been. This year has been a really unusual year with the COVID things going on. So we saw, not only for San Felipe del Rio, but for all of our clients, we saw pretty significant claim decreases in April and May, to the tune of almost 50% of what we would normally anticipate. We have data, we have claims data through June at this point, and we anticipated that the June claims data was going to decrease significantly as well, but the reality was we had a couple of really large claims that were paid in June, so our claims experience in June was actually higher than we anticipated. But I do expect that to go down. And the reason for the lower claims for these last few months in April and May is that no one could get medical care. Outside of COVID, they were not doing elective procedures. So if somebody had planned a knee surgery or a back surgery or any type of elective but necessary procedure, those just weren't being done during this COVID timeframe. And I anticipate that to continue on for a little bit, for perhaps the rest of the summer. That does not mean that those claims will not happen. I think they will, and our actuaries, and we've run some projections, suggest that those claims will happen. They will just more likely happen in 2021. So that person that was anticipating a knee surgery didn't do it this summer, but they may very likely do it in the springtime. So I don't think it's a ultimate cost reducer. It's just a short-term reduction that will get caught up in 2021, which is one reason we're projecting a little bit higher claims for 2021 than we might otherwise have projected. So what this table shows, there's to do a very quick recap about how the plan works and the stop loss coverage that protects the plan. So that'll put some context around this table. So within the plan, there are two types of stop loss insurance. One is specific stop loss, which protects the district and the plan against claims on one individual. So if we have one individual within the plan year that has a very significant claim, we're capped on that particular person for that year at a number, and that number for you guys is $600,000. So the district pays all the claims up to $600,000. We have insurance to reimburse us for any amount over that $600,000 number. So for that, we pay a premium. It's a relatively low premium. It's on the order of $17 per employee per month. Excuse me. And then we also pay Aetna an administrative fee to handle the plan and administer all the things that they do. So those two components are what is made up in this number, which is fixed, what we call fixed costs. That's the bill that Amy gets every single month, or at least 1/12 of that, for administering the plan and paying for the specific stop loss and the aggregate stop loss. The aggregate stop loss sets an upper limit on the overall amount of claims that are paid during the year. And this is what allows the district to know what their liabilities are going into a plan year. So for this particular year, for 2020, our fixed cost is $358,952. Our claims liability, the most we could pay for claims in 2020 is 11,000,008. So our total worst case scenario for our planned cost would be 12,184,000. Our funding is about 10,290,000. So we're funding underneath our maximum at about $1.9 million. That's not optimal, but it's okay because this claims liability is an upper limit. It is not what we anticipate or what is actually happening. So it's okay, but we do have to be aware that this maximum liability exists, and that is a liability to the district ultimately. So that's for 2020. For 2021, these are my estimates of what I think the stop loss will do. It could be better or worse. We are planning and working towards an RFP for the stop loss insurance. So number one, I don't know what Aetna's renewal is at this point. And number two, we intend to do an RFP for stop loss insurance to make sure that we're getting the best rates and terms on that product. But I anticipate that the stop loss insurance will go up just a little bit. And so I'm suggesting that our fixed costs may go up on the order of $15,000. The claims liability, I do think, will go up fairly significantly from where it is. And that puts us at a maximum liability for 2021 of just over $15 million. If our current funding remains, we'll generate about $10.9 million, which leaves a potential deficit of 4.2. And we'll talk about in a moment how we address that issue. But remember, these are our worst case scenarios. These are if everything goes bad and we have a whole bunch more claims than we actually anticipate. This is what it potentially could be. The table below is a more realistic look. It's a more what we actually think will happen. The fixed cost doesn't change. So I'm back on 2020 at 358,952. Taking the first 6 months of data, doing some projections of what we think will wind up at around $10.3 million in net claims. So our total cost for the plan is $10,745,000, as opposed to our worst case scenario of 12.1. So that leaves us funding a deficit funding of $455,000 for this year. Again, we'll talk about how that's going to be addressed. For 2021, I'm estimating claims of about $11.8 million. And really that is just normal trend. That's normal, applying normal increases that we see of about 8% to 8 to 10% to get to this 11.8. So our estimate of what 2021 is going to look like is about $12.1 million. Again, the funding at 10.9, that leaves us an estimated deficit of 1.295 million for 2021. So if we can slide on down the sheet. So those funding numbers assume that we have proposed, the district administration is agreeing with us that we do need to increase funding in some amount for 2021, and actually starting in this budget year in September. So we've modeled an increase in the amount of $62 per employee per month, which as consultants we feel is absolutely necessary at this time to do. So it would change the current district contribution from 493.07 to 555.07, and that'll generate about $1 million on an annual basis. So just as almost a CYA, we're always going to recommend that you fund in some way to the maximum liability under your stop loss policy, but there's two ways to get there. One is you can fund it all in the current plan year, or number two, you can do it using a smaller increase in funding amount plus your accumulated reserves that we've built up over time. So that's option number two on your letter. So over the last 3 years, if our projections for the rest of 2020 hold, then over the last 3 plan years, we'll have accumulated about $2.7 million in surplus. And that is actual cash retained in district accounts for the health plan. And so we know we have at current funding some deficits going forward, and we are suggesting that those deficits be made up through using some of this surplus and a smaller increase in the funding going forward. So that is probably the most palatable way to do it for the district at this point. Be aware, however, that if we went to our projected maximum liability for 2021, we would eat up all of this surplus, and there would be an additional $1.5 million that the district would have to come up with in some way. I don't think that's likely, but it is a possibility. And just know that all of these numbers were really early in this process, and so all of these numbers are subject to change depending on what happens with our stop loss quotes and negotiations in that arena. Depends on what happens the rest of the year. You know, all of these things are projections, but we want to give you what I think are the worst case scenarios, and then we're going to hope that this thing works a whole lot better from a cost standpoint. But I think it's important that you know what is the worst case scenario for you. So that's what we have for you tonight. I'm open for any questions from the board or Dr. Rios.
Mr. President, just to share with our board, it's always been our contention from administration that we want to get as close to funding the maximum liability. But because it is a worst case scenario that seldom ever happens, we're more comfortable funding the projected liability, knowing that we will have enough money in the health insurance fund balance and the local fund balance should we ever have to meet the entire maximum liability. That's why we've always tried to keep a balance between increasing the funding for the health insurance but not going overboard to where we can't meet any of the other district needs. So at this point, based on what Mr. Coldaway has presented, I believe that we have enough. Should we increase the employee contribution by $63, that contribution coupled with the existing health insurance fund balance and other fund balances in the district's general budget, that would be more than enough to cover the maximum liability should we get to that point. Therefore, our recommendation when Ms. Childers goes back and reviews the workbook would be that we do increase the funding to $63 per employee per month, and that'll keep us solvent. This has been the same approach that we've used in recommending how we fund the health insurance for the last 3 years. I appreciate Mr. Coldaway's input. Just working with Brown & Brown has been a million times better than what we previously experienced, and we've been able to stay solvent. Again, because of the maximum liability, you know, $2.7 million doesn't seem like a whole lot. But if you remember 3 years ago, we were looking at a deficit beyond our fund balance. So I still think that we're in a very healthy situation for the 2020 year and the 2021 plan year. Based on how things come next year, we might have a different conversation, but administration has always been clear that our health fund balance will be good for the 2019, 2020, and 21 school year. So the 2021 school year is going to be our third year, and we might have to have more serious conversations, but right now we feel comfortable with this recommendation.
Dr. Rios, I just want to add, I sit on the employee benefits cooperative for TASB, and this is happening across the state where premiums are going up as a result of what is going on and the claims that have gone up. And I'm glad that we're in this situation in regard to having a fund balance, that we are able to work this out within those parameters. But I know that in the coming years, this will have to change. And so I'm glad that at this point we're sitting with a healthy fund balance that we can help our employees, especially for this first year. Anyone else? So I'm glad that the proposal administration will recommend is a good one for our employees and everyone else that works with the district.
Mr. Coldaway and his team will be doing an RFQ for our stop loss insurance. Is that correct, Mr. Coldaway, at the end of this year?
Yes, sir. I'm waiting on one report that I need from Aetna, and then that'll go out in the next week or 10 days.
That concludes Mr. Coldaway's presentation. Is there any more questions for him?
I just want to thank you for putting this information together, and I'm glad that again we have a healthy fund balance. That you know, at least we have a place to go to and be okay for this coming year.
Sure.
Anyone else have a question regarding to insurance? Yes, that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies.
Thank you, Mr. Coldaway. Mr. Mesa, I'm now going to ask Ms. Childress to come back and take us through the workbook. So Ms. Childress, if you'll join the presenters room again. Let me open up your workbook file, ma'am, if you'll give me a second. Sorry, ma'am, it's doesn't always respond as quick as I'd like it, but I think I'm there. There you go, ma'am. Ms. Childers, what tab would you like for me to go to first?
We can start with the revenue tab, the first one to the right there.
Yep.
Good evening again. This workbook, of course, is updated based on the proposals that we spoke about earlier. It is a continually changing workbook, so it continues to be updated as recommendations are made. So the first tab is the revenue, which we've already gone over, but it does show the updated revenue of the $100,114,000 that we are proposing at this time. So if you would like to go to the next tab, the GPI tab. So this is the general pay increase tab, and as Mrs. Webb mentioned, so the first two models, Model A and Model B, these were the TASB models that were given to us. The first one was based on a 2% increase to the midpoint. The second one was based on a 1.5% increase to the midpoint. And then the third recommendation is the recommendation that administration has presented, which it would the salaries would remain the same for teachers, the starting salary, but we would provide a $1,000 return to work stipend for each teacher. That $1,000 equated to a 1.7% increase to the teacher scale midpoint. Therefore, we are also recommending a 1.7% return to work stipend for the paraprofessionals and auxiliary staff, also based on their midpoint range. And that comes out to a total cost of $986,639. If you'd like to go to the next tab.
Mr. Mesa, we're not able to see the individuals on the screen, so if anybody has any questions, please just speak up. Okay? And we'll
I
go
have
back
one
to
just
that
real
tab.
quick. Mr. Mesa, I have one real quick. Yes, if y'all can hear me. Where does our food service fall under? Does that fall under para or auxiliary?
Auxiliary.
Auxiliary.
Okay, so they would be getting the 1.7 as well.
Yes,
Return to
sir.
work stipend. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right. On the conversions reductions tab, these are positions that HR we either converting or they were excess positions. The only changes to this is down at the bottom. We have added a couple of new positions that we would like to recommend for the year. That is the CNI specialist, a health services coordinator, and an accountant. So that's the only update for this tab.
Are there any questions on any of these three positions, board members or Mr. Mesa?
Yeah, there were questions in regard to the CNI specialists. Could you give a little bit more detail?
Yes, sir. Over the summer, we've had one curriculum coordinator. The curriculum coordinator is not a teaching position, it's an administrative job. They've undertaken the task of updating the curriculum documents and trying to make them, one, update them like we would every year, but two, make them easier to use in an electronic platform for remote instruction. They worked a better part of the summer, and they were able to get through the first 6 weeks of school. So moving forward, that person who's primarily in charge of the curriculum documents has the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6 weeks to complete for the rest of the school year. It's a whole lot of work, but I tell you, the work that they've done this far is incredible. It really changes the curriculum documents in a way that'll make it easier for teachers to teach. But there's a lot of work left. So, and we have downsized that department. So our recommendation is to add 2 teaching positions, not administrative positions, but 2 teaching positions that will continue to work with the curriculum coordinator to finish these documents the rest of this year so that we can have the next 6 weeks ready before the present 6 weeks ends. Our goal is that we would finish all of elementary this year and then put the same amount of effort into our middle school documents the following year. And then after that, then see what would be needed in high school. But again, these are teaching positions that are funded just as a regular teacher would be, with no extra days, no extra pay. They're just working on curriculum documents. The job they've done up to now is phenomenal, but it's only for the first 6 weeks. There's absolutely no way that they would get done, that the one person at CNI that's in charge of the documents would get it done working by themselves.
Dr. Rios, these teachers would be pulled out from the campus? I mean, if they, let's say they apply.
Well, sure, if they would apply, we would, the people that are selected would then be pulled from the campuses, and then their positions would be filled either by excess teachers or by, every year, Mr. Mesa, we fund 5 extra positions for the district should we need them. Or they would be funded by one of those 5 extra positions that are already in the budget. Our first goal would be to fill them using excess positions, but we're also trying to keep the class count as low as possible. So we are probably assigning some of the excess positions to campuses, even though they don't need them for the 22-to-1. We're funding them just so that they can keep the class counts at 15-to-1 or better in classrooms where kids are going to opt for face-to-face instruction, or where parents are going to opt to face-to-face instruction.
Well, I guess, my question is more weight going to be placed on teachers that have the technology background or the experience in the classroom?
Mr. Mesa, the 2 teachers that helped the curriculum coordinator were very experienced teachers that understood the curriculum documents, and they're not new teachers, they're experienced teachers. Now, obviously when we post it, anybody could apply, but we're looking for people with instructional knowledge and experience.
I'll turn it over to board members. Ms. Wood?
I don't see the total money allocated to that position on the screen.
You don't see the total money allocated? Well, it's 2 positions for a total of $117,560. So if you divide that by 2, I'm gonna say it's approximately 58.7 per position. I'm sure I'm a few dollars off, but it's right under 60,000 a position.
Also, my concern, one is the wording, CNI specialist. To me, a specialist is someone that is specializing in curriculum and instruction, or has a master's degree in curriculum and instruction, or online learning per se. But what I hear right now is taking out teachers that have worked during the summer. For that matter, if we're looking at less students within the campuses, and we're trying to save some funds here, wouldn't it be wiser to look at these teachers on the campuses, and if they don't have as many students, then I would say that CNI staff has the knowledge and skills to work with the different teachers on the campuses, so that they can continue to work on a curriculum that will flow clear across. Because the wording specialist to me is someone specializing in that particular area. So we have teachers that are excellent at every level. And the way it's being stated now is that we are looking at specifically a couple of teachers should they apply. And that's.
Well, Ms. Webb, we can change the title to whatever is clear. The title is not gonna hold us up. But what I would do make clear is that right now our curriculum documents are updated through the first 6 weeks. And we need to keep the work going. And based on all the work that is left for CNI to do, we don't have the personnel. And I think that I wouldn't be recommending it unless I strongly believed that they were needed. And at this point, they are. I can call them CNI teachers. I could call them curriculum document workers. But at this point, I really need those two to continue the work of the curriculum documents. In every audit that we've had, the auditors have been they've been consistent in indicating that the strongest position that we have is our curriculum documents, but we have to continue to update them. I really wish that we'd had more focus previously, and that even our middle school documents would be at that level. I really need these positions to continue the work, especially with the changing playing field that we have right now.
Anyone else? I can't see everybody.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mesa.
Yeah, okay, Mr. Overfelt?
I just have a couple concerns, and they're just verbal concerns, and it's just my opinion. I understand where you're trying to come from, Dr. Rios, on several of these. However, with the funding shortages that we're facing and the deficits there, it just, in my mind, it flies in the face of what we're looking at and what we're doing. For those CNI, whatever it ends up being called, because of the reduction in class size and the moving of teachers around and moving PE teachers back into the classroom, we don't have individuals that are being moved around whose positions aren't needed per se anymore, that couldn't just drop into those, as opposed to hiring and pulling people out of the classroom right before we start. Out of the 4 positions, I'm all on board with the health services coordinator there. It's the CNI and the accountant one that I'm just having trouble with right now, justifying.
Yeah. I understand that, Mr. Overfelt, because of everything that we're going through. But you know, at the end of the day, we made sure that the classrooms were able to maintain not 22-to-1, but 15-to-1 for those kids that were going to show up. So we believe that we've taken care of the classrooms. But our mission is teaching and learning, and we can't do that without the adequate curriculum support. Now, I'm all for everything that we have to do, but I'm at the opposite position. Of the 3 positions, because of our mission, those 2 positions are the most important. The health services coordinator, I think that with what we're trying to assist in moving forward, making sure everybody's safe, is, I think the health services coordinator is also important. But the truth is that if I had to, I could have other people drop some of the other duties that they have to meet that duty. Now, I would not want to use Ms. Sandra Hernandez in that capacity, because she does so much more in keeping us up to date with policy and everything else. But if I had to, I would do that. But I want to be clear, the curriculum documents is the backbone of the instruction for the district, and we need to stay up to date on those documents. Now, obviously in the past, that wasn't the case, but I would also venture to say that the growth that we've been able to make in the last few years, it is supported by that standard, which is our documents. And that's my recommendation. I don't expect for everyone to see it the same way, but that is my strongest recommendation. Just because we're in this pandemic doesn't mean that we don't continue with the necessary rigor to make sure that students are fine afterwards.
No, I completely agree with that. Pandemic doesn't rule out instruction what it should be. I just wanted to voice the concerns, and that way my fellow board members knew kind of where I was. But I appreciate the explanation, sir. Thank you.
And I can understand, weighing both, because I've been very vocal in regard to taking those experienced teachers from, let's say, bilingual program that went on to be facilitators or strategists, because those are the experienced teachers that would help drive our scores up in regard to the bilingual program. We're talking about a different area here, but the same thing applies where you have those experienced teachers leaving the classroom, and we know that these students are left so far behind when we close down schools, and more than likely they were not involved with all the curriculum that was either online or distributed, and assessments and so forth. So we have to look at all areas, and I know as board members we're always concerned with those experienced teachers being pulled out of the classroom, and the students that were assigned to them perhaps not receiving that experienced teacher in their classroom. That we start with someone that is more than likely a first-year teacher. So those things have to be weighed, and I can understand both sides. We are in difficult times, and these are hard decisions to make, but I can see both points. Anyone else? I can't see everyone, so if there's anyone, would you speak up? I guess we have none.
What's the next tab?
Construction, the orange one. All right, so no changes have been made to this tab. It's still the resurfacing of the high school track and the life skills unit at Del Rio Freshman. We have nothing under food service at this time. And so under operations, nothing has changed on this tab. It's still the HVAC service contracts, some maintenance vehicles, and then exterior and interior painting at some of the elementary campuses, and then possibly some campus furniture at Ruben Chavita.
If we sum up this total here on just the painting projects and the campus furniture, that gives us $394,000, almost $400,000 that can very easily be removed from the budget if we needed to fund other more important items. And now I didn't highlight and measure the HVAC and the train because we've in the past haven't allotted enough money for those projects, and then we've felt it in the classrooms, and I'd hate to put our teachers and our students through that, but that is an option.
Under technology, we did remove at this time, the one-to-one devices, as we had shown in the proposals in the earlier presentation. So all we have left at this time is the virtual environments. So that took out $627,000.
And there again, if we don't do the additional laptops from fund balance, then we don't have the need to provide as much of the virtual environment, and this could also be cut down to about $300,000. So that would be an additional position, an additional savings depending on what the board decided to do. But if the board doesn't wish to fund the laptops from fund balance or from some of the other money I indicated in the operations department over here, this money can be further reduced because then we don't have the need. When we add less devices, then we don't have to worry about that piece. So that's just another area.
Dr. Rios, the only question I have in technology is everyone is experiencing the same problem where the whole world is ordering laptops and iPads and so forth, are we going to actually be able to secure these devices by the time school starts?
Yes, Mr. Mesa, you are correct that just the whole world is trying to buy laptops left and right. And we have orders right now. We have orders for Chromebooks, and Mr. Henge will text me the exact amount of Chromebooks that we're still pending to receive. And on top of that, TA facilitated an order where they're paying 50% of the Chromebooks, and I signed off on that purchase order. Then we'll ask the board to ratify later on in the meeting. But the earliest that we're expected to get any of those Chromebooks is in September. So I think that what we've decided to do as a district is going to get is we issued iPads to students in kinder through second grade because that's enough for them to do their asynchronous learning. And then Mr. Henge is just working as hard as he can. I've authorized for his staff to work as much overtime as necessary because now they're taking desktops. So they're converting them again from the virtual environment to make sure they work when they get home. And so now we're starting to issue desktops to students instead of laptops. So our elementary students in grades 3, 4, and 5, they're going to get a desktop, not a laptop, an actual desktop. So it's going to have to be fixed somewhere in their home. And our students in 7th and 8th grade, starting next week, 6th graders will get a laptop, 7th and 8th graders will get a desktop. And then depending on how many of the 800 Chromebooks that we're waiting for arrive, that'll depend on what high school students get. So the chances are we will not get the Chromebooks in time, but between laptops that we've purchased and desktops that we have, we'll be able to meet the needs to start our remote instruction. Once the Chromebooks show up, then we'll be able to replace some, but we're expecting the earliest is middle of September, and none of us believe that's going to happen. We all believe it's more like October, November.
Thank you.
I have a question, sir.
Yes, Mr. Oldfield.
And this goes back to what we had discussed at the beginning of the workshop and what we talked about last, I guess the last workshop on construction, Dr. Rios.
Yes, sir.
On that tab, the essentially $200,000 for the resurface of the track. Again, because of what the year is looking like and what's going to happen with UIL sports and different things like that, I don't see that as necessarily a need to do this year. That's 800 Chromebooks right there that could be purchased using the 200,000, or we could roll that 200,000 over to increasing the one-time stipend. It wouldn't be much, but I just don't think, because of what's going on, the track resurface needs to be a huge priority there. I mean, we walked it during graduation, and I know it's got some issues, but I mean, I think we have to be realistic as far as athletics goes as to how much that's going to go in and be used this year. In another year, come back and resurface it. I just don't see it this year. I think that's 200,000 that could be spent towards technology or somewhere else to draw down the deficit. Again, my opinion, and I know I expressed it last time.
Just so that we're all aware, the total amount of Chromebooks that we expect to receive are 800 Chromebooks that we purchase locally with local funds, and then an additional 300 that we purchased through TEA, through that purchasing cooperative through Region 4. That's 1,100 Chromebooks that we hope to receive. That, in addition to the other 200 laptops that are missing, would be able to replace all of the desktops that we're issuing right now. So at least for this year, we would have enough Chromebooks. Now, how much do we want to put forward to just stockpile for next year should this continue? Which I hope it doesn't. I hope and pray it doesn't. But that is a possibility. So I just want to reassure the board that we have ordered enough technology to support us this year and not have to depend on the desktops. So is it good to buy additional laptops or Chromebooks? Absolutely. But we've again provided enough for this year. We just need for them to come in. But we can certainly work with the 200,000 for the track resurfacing, and we can work with this amount over here, which is 400,000 on the painting at the different campuses, and even the maintenance vehicle that we're looking for. So combined, we have about $600,000 that we can work with just in these two areas. But again, that's these are just recommendations. We hope to get some feedback from the board members using this workbook over the next 5 to 7 days.
Well,
But I would really encourage board members, painting is a lot less important than resurfacing the track, and both of them combined are a lot less important than the Chromebooks, or I say Chromebooks, any type of learning device. Painting for me is way at the bottom. Then after that would be the district vehicle. Then after that would be the resurfacing of the track. Then after that is obviously the Chromebooks or laptops way at the top.
Okay, because I just look at what other districts around the state are doing, and I know you can't compare Dallas ISD to San Felipe Del Rio. Dallas ISD is going to spend $20 million to do one-to-one, but they've got 100,000 something students. But Uvalde ISD spent $2 million on iPads for every single individual in the district, and Apple did something where they had basically it was a 3-year note as opposed to paying it all at once. So I just think if we have the ability to build up our stockpile, and again, hopefully this goes away in the next 18 months or so, but so we don't get caught flat-footed like some other districts did. I think we did a really good rollout when it happened, when we had to shut down back in March, and others didn't fare so well. That's just kind of where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And I appreciate these discussions because, again, they're important for us to make our decision, and we still have some days so that we can look at each category.
Is there another tab you'd like for me to go to?
If you'd like to look at the certified tab, that's just a recap of everything, of the revenues up at the top, and then the expenditures are at the bottom, and it does show, once again, that we are at a balanced budget. Just a note, since we did on the health insurance, we currently have 400,000 set aside in this general budget for that. So the other 600,000 would either possibly come from fund balance, or we would be able to fund as we continue to make decisions on other expenditures that are needed or not needed at this time. So that's all that I have.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Anyone else have a question? I think we pretty much discussed every category. So how many days do we have to make our decision here?
On Monday, we're going to have a budget a meeting, budget workshop / regular meeting, but it's really more of a regular meeting. If there's any updates to the budget, we would provide them at that point. I really don't see too many changes happening between now and Monday. So the main purpose of the meeting Monday will be the special call meeting to set the hearing for the budget and the tax rate. And we have to set it 10 days after Monday. So we'll meet Monday and then we have 10 days after that. So what will be the official date, Amy, when we adopt?
The public hearing is scheduled for the 24th of August. That's when we will adopt the tax rate and hopefully adopt the tax rate and the budget at that time.
18 calendar days from today, sir.
We still have a couple of days to work on this interactive worksheet.
Yes.
Okay. Will do.
Thank you. Thank you.
At this time, we'll end the budget workshop and enter our regular meeting. First item that we have is consent agenda. Again, if anyone would like to either have questions on the consent agenda or any item that you would like to pull out. Anyone?
President Mesa, Dr. Rios, did you still want me to go over the compensation pay plan?
Oh, Mr. Mesa, I'm so sorry. We got caught up in the other discussion, but part of the budget was to go over the compensation pay plan because we are making some recommendations today. During this meeting, traditionally is when we approve the compensation.
Okay, I skipped over that one. I'm sorry.
So, if we can come back to our budget workshop, do you have to take a vote on that, or how does that work? I can't recall the Robert's Rules of Orders right now.
We're not going into a regular meeting yet. We're going back to the workshop that we had been in and continue with the compensation plan that I left out.
Go ahead, Ms.
Thank you. Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, members of the board. In your board packet, we included the proposed compensation pay plan for the 2020-21 school year. And like Dr. Rios mentioned, due to COVID-19 and the financial impact it'll have with the district, we will offer a return to work stipend for teachers, paraprofessionals, and auxiliary staff. If you go to your workbook under the section compensation pay plan, we would like to review the changes. We did include next to your computer an updated revision because we noticed that the red line item wasn't included. So you will see that in the red line item, we have, as the teacher's years of experience progress, the salary remains the same. So they will not get a salary increase, but they will get the 1,000 return to work stipend. In blue on the top, we noted new changes. We have the athletic trainer assistant. This has always been classified under the teacher pay scale, but it was never listed. So we want to be transparent and say this is where they are classified under, as well as the early childhood interventionist, which this is grant funded. And then if approved, the curriculum and instruction specialist as well. If you look at the next page, we'll go with, on the packet, we'll go with the administrative professional pay plan. It is recommended to change the days for our custodial coordinator, maintenance coordinator, and operations coordinator from 250 days to 241 days. This is what they used to be before, and then it was changed. But due to all the time that they're working after hours, they don't get the full 10 days holidays. So changing them back to 241 days, they would get the 10 days vacation. On pay grade 2, TASB recommended to move the payroll supervisor from the paraprofessional pay scale to the administrative pay scale due to her role. On pay grade 3, registered nurse, in the same pay grade, we've always had the CTE health science instructor, but it wasn't noted before in our pay plans, so we wanted to make sure and include it. Under pay grade 4, we're including the accountant, if that gets approved, and we'll talk about those when we discuss the job descriptions. On pay grade 5, we're including the coordinator for health services. Again, that will come up later in the job descriptions. And then under pay grade 5, early college high school, it used to be director, but now the title is changing to principal. It's same pay grade, so it's not moving up, it's just changing the title. Next page, under paraprofessional pay plan, there's no changes. Paraprofessional pay plan, pay grade 4. We want to convert a CNI secretary position that is vacant at this time to secretary bilingual programs. Currently, our bilingual director does not have a secretary, so that would be converting the position we already have to this position. Under pay grade 4 also, currently we have a secretary for Title I bilingual programs, but this is the secretary for federal and state programs. So we would just change the title. And then paraprofessional pay plan, pay grade 6, no changes. 7, no changes. And 8, we would delete the payroll supervisor. Any questions so far on those 2 categories before we move to the other categories?
Any questions, board members? I see no hands raised.
For the teacher stipend, we also included a revised copy to include the deletions, the red line items. So you can see the P-TECH coordinator, that position has been deleted because these duties will be assigned to our Del Rio Cares coordinator, and they'll have the responsibility of the P-TECH coordinator as well. The demonstration classroom exemplary lessons, those are deleted. Those before were funded a while back from our EEIP grant. Then all our staff retention, signing bonuses, those are being recommended to be deleted. The literacy coach coordinator will stay on this plan. Then we included the return to work stipend. We're proposing $1,000 for teachers to be paid half in September and half in December. And also for paraprofessional and auxiliaries. Yes.
Correction, half in September and half in January.
In January, okay. So we'll make that correction. And then on the grant for special education, before it was just in the summer that they would offer to pay extra duty for the completion of this evaluations, but now due to COVID and they're backlogged, they're also going to offer this payment on weekends and after hours. And next, we have the supplemental stipends. If you go back to your board packet, supplemental stipends, there's no changes. The athletic stipends, there's only a couple of changes here. The tennis assistant high school, that changed to 2. And 1, so one of them is offered in the fall and then the other one in the spring. So the fund was split for those 2 to have one in the fall and then the one in the spring. And that reflects in the tennis assistant high school JV. So 2 changes to 1. Then if you move to the substitute pay scale, we just made some updates here on the long term. To be clear, we put that it has to be 4 years degree license at level of Texas certified, but not in area assigned, whether they have the provisional, professional, standard, or 1 year intern. Then after 5 days, consecutive days for the same instructor, and also as long as they have the provisional, professional, standard, or 1 year. Now that we hired critical needs aides, we added the substitutes in case we need them. Next page, for the part-time temporary pay, there's no changes. Next page for the part-time temporary pay, there's no changes either. For summer school, there's no changes for the 2021 school year. I went over all the changes that we're going to be recommending in for our compensation pay plan later tonight. Do you have any questions?
Somebody have a question? No? Okay, go on.
Thank you.
That was it, Mr. Mesa. So now we can go to the regular board meeting.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry for that, skipping that very important item here. So I guess if anyone has questions, now's the time to bring those up. We'll be approving this compensation plan later on. Dr. Rich?
That's it, Mr. Mesa. We can go to the regular board meeting, then we're done with the budget workshop. Again, we just hope everybody can join us Monday. We need to set the hearing for the budget and tax rate.
Okay, at this point, we'll adjourn the workshop again and go into our regular meetings as it shows in our agenda. The consent agenda is the first item in the regular meeting. And again, there's purchases that have been made there, no donations at this time. That if anyone has any questions on those purchases, now's the time to ask. There being none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Motion by Mr. Orfeld, seconded by Mrs. Linda Webb. All those in agreement, please indicate. Ms. Gonzalez? Motion to pass. Motion to approve. Ms. Webb? Motion to approve. And Amy Haynes? Okay, yes, and Mr. Orfeld. Okay, motion passes. We have approved the consent agenda. We go on to administration. Discussion and possible action to ratify Region 4 Operations Connectivity Bulk Order Agreement. Sandra Hernandez.
Go ahead, Sandra, you're muted. Mr. Mesa, I don't know what's going on with Sandra's microphone, but I'll present. The commissioner gave us the opportunity to buy a whole lot of.
I think she's on now.
Are you on now, Sandra?
Yes, I am. My
Okay,
cursor froze.
Okay, well, you can do the next 3 items. Let me finish this one up.
That'll be fine.
The commissioner gave us a chance to buy a whole lot of laptops at a 50% reduced price and buy a whole lot of hotspots. The problem is that they gave us just a couple of days to sign the MOU. So I visited with our attorney, and he said that y'all had authorized me to do expenses related to this COVID deal, and two, he said that we could bring it to the next meeting to ratify. So I agreed to the MOU presented by ESC 4. I signed it. We won't do the purchase until tomorrow, until y'all approve that later on. So right now, we're just asking you to ratify the MOU that I approved with the Education Service Center Region 4 for the purchase of both the Chromebooks and the AT&T hotspots. Are there any questions?
I think at 50% off, we can't go wrong on that. I just again question the delivery date, if that's going to be feasible, because everyone ordering from the state at 50%, will that become a reality? Andrew?
They've indicated that they can do it, that they worked with all the manufacturers. I believe the state will do it. They just never specified a timeline. And we have 800 Chromebooks on our own that we ordered ahead of these Chromebooks, 3,000 Chromebooks that we're getting from the state. So it just seems like a whole lot. And Mr. Henke has visited with the manufacturers, and he said that they will not put TA's orders ahead of the orders they already had. So it's just difficult. I don't see how they can get all of that, but we're hopeful.
So in reality, TA is paying 50%?
Well, they're paying 50%. They're using federal grant funds to pay their 50%. So they get to administer part of that ESSER grant, and that's the money that they're using to pay their 50%. And then the district, the understanding in the MOU is that the district used this year's funding to pay for it. So they're because they want us to pay it now. So we ratify the MOU today, and we submit the payment tomorrow.
Okay. Well, anyone else? I think that's a pretty good deal, regardless. Let's just hope that we can get them this year.
Yes, sir.
So the recommendation from administration?
Okay. It's a recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve Operation Connectivity Bulk Order Agreement between San Felipe Del Rio Consolidated Independent School District and the Region 4 Education Service Center in the amount of $370,920. Funding source is general funds for the purchase of mobile broadband hotspots and learning devices.
With the recommendation from the administration, I'll entertain a motion for approval. Amy Haynes, motion by Amy Haynes, seconded by Mr. Overfelt. All those in agreement, Ms. Gonzalez? Motion yes. Myself, yes. Linda Webb, yes. Amy Haynes, yes. And Mr. Overfelt? Yes. Motion carries. It is approved. We go on to item 10B. Consideration to approve the 2020 TASB delegate and alternate. Sandra Hernandez.
Good evening, Mr. Mesa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. TASB has called upon school districts to designate delegates to serve during the 2020 TASB Delegate Assembly. Delegates play an important role in TASB's governance, helping develop the vision for the association. The San Felipe Del Rio CISD Board of Trustees may appoint one delegate and an alternate to serve as representatives during this assembly. Last year, the designated 2019 delegate was Mrs. Guanajuato Webb, and the alternate was Ms. Diana Gonzalez. Mr. Mesa is a TASB director currently, and by virtue of his position, will already be participating as a voting delegate, so he cannot be designated as the delegate or the alternate. And at this time, I'm going to pass the information over to Mr. Mesa. I do want to let everyone know that the TASB conference that is scheduled to be on October, the TASB Delegate Assembly is scheduled to take place on October the 3rd. The TASB conference has now been announced as going virtual. So there is no trip to Dallas at this point. However, there have been no definite plans or announcements made by TASB with regard to the delegate assembly at this point.
Thank you, Sandra. And just want to add to that, that the sessions will still be, will be virtual. It'll be the same format that we had for Summer Leadership Institute. The sessions will be on for 30 days. If we sign up again, register, we will be available to see the general sessions and also the breakout sessions all being virtual. But at least they'll be up for 30 days so we can take advantage. And I just want to add that there were some outstanding speakers during the SLI. I hope that you were able to see the general session. There was one, I think his name is Ricksby, was an outstanding presenter, did an awesome job. So at this time, I'd like to designate Gianna Gonzalez, could you be our delegate? And Mrs. Webb, could you be the alternate? Would that be fine? Okay, Gianna Gonzalez being the delegate, along with myself, I consider delegate, and then Mrs. Webb, in case Mrs. Gonzalez can't do it, you would be the alternate. Okay? We do, I will make the motion that, again, Mrs. Gonzalez be the delegate, designated from our district. Mrs. Linda Webb will be the alternate. Is there a motion? Mr. Orfeld, seconded by Amy Haynes. All those in favor, Ms. Gonzalez, 4, myself 4, Mrs. Webb 4, and Amy Haynes 4, and Ms. Orfeld 4. Motion passes. Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you.
Item 10C, consideration to approve and authorize the superintendent to submit HB 3834 certification form validating the completion of cybersecurity training for San Felipe CISD. Mr. Hinge.
Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, members of the board. The cybersecurity training program was given to all district employees electronically on May 8th. And we ran several campaigns for the training program that ended on June 12th, at which time 1,482 employees have received the training, which completed the requirements. All board members should have a copy of the campaign that we did with the enrolled learners at 1482. A breakdown of all the campaign or the modules that everyone had gone through and completed assessments to give us our final total. So at this point, we are ready to submit these results to the state. In order to do so, we need to proceed with recommendation. Are there any questions?
Questions from board members? Seeing none? No questions.
Recommendation? It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve and authorize the superintendent to submit the HB 3834 certification form validating the completion of cybersecurity training for SFDR CISD.
You've heard the recommendation from administration. Is there a motion for approval? Mrs. Webb, seconded by Ms. Gonzalez. All those in favor, Ms. Gonzalez? 4, myself 4, Mrs. Webb 4, Amy Haynes 4, and Ms. Orfeld 4. Motion's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hinge. Go on to item 10D. Consideration to approve an amendment to the order of election for the school district trustee elections to be held on November 3rd, 2020. Sandra Agnez.
Good evening once again, Mr. Mesa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. If you recall, last month we did bring the order of election up for approval. On July 28th, Governor Abbott issued a proclamation suspending Section 85.001A of the Texas Election Code to expand the early voting period for the November 3rd elections. Pursuant to the governor's proclamation, the early voting period for any election authorized to occur on November the 3rd, 2020 will now begin on Tuesday, October 13th, 2020, and last through Friday, October 30th, 2020. So there has been an increase in the number of days pursuant to the governor's proclamation. However, we did receive an alert yesterday from the county clerk indicating that the ACLU has petitioned to add an additional, expand the early voting period to the weekend before early voting. There may be some additional changes. So the order of election that you have currently reads where we have added the extra days and the weekends for early voting. However, we anticipate that there may be a change to this particular order, and I would like to make the recommendation that we approve the order and make the amendment without having to come forward for signatures and accepting any changes should the governor approve any subsequent changes from this point.
Questions for board members? Mr. Orfeld?
Has the county clerk, I haven't heard, has the county clerk laid out how the voting process will be for early voting and for on election day? Will you have to come in and register for state and federal and then walk into a separate area and register for local, i.e. school board, city, and hospital board? They're kind of like we did a couple, 2 terms ago or so. Or will it just be one registration and you get all the ballots? Have they laid that out yet?
At this point, what we do know is we are going to have a joint election at one location, which is at the Del Real Civic Center, and they are anticipating that if we were to check, we would like to make it as easy as possible for the voters. However, along with this, the notice that I shared with you with regard to the ACLU, there is also a recommendation that that there may be some additional changes to separate rather than combine. We're going to wait on word on what if the governor makes any further decisions. But at this point, the only thing that we can provide to you is the extension of the days that were included by the governor in his recent proclamation, and to let you know and to let everyone know that at this point there has been a petition that has been presented to the governor where he has not been able to provide an amendment to the proclamation at this point. Just, it's basically a heads up that a petition was presented, but no decision has been made by the governor.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? It sounds like we're gonna have some addition to what we're doing tonight, some changes. Okay, well, hearing none, the recommendation, please.
Yes, sir. It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the amendment to the order of election for the school district trustee elections to be held on Tuesday, November 4th, 2020.
You've heard the recommendation, is there a motion for approval? Okay, Mrs. Webb, is there a second? Mr. Orfeld, all those in favor, Ms. Gonzalez? In favor, myself in favor, Mrs. Webb? In favor, Amy Haynes? In favor, Mr. Orfeld? In favor, motion passes.
Thank you, sir. And I will provide updates. Should they become available, I will certainly provide the board with updates.
I'm sure there will be, thank you.
Thank you.
We go on to item 11, curriculum instruction. Consideration to approve 2020-2021 on-ramps cooperative program agreement and data sharing agreement between San Felipe Del CISD, and the University of Texas at Austin Office of Strategy and Policy for the on-ramps dual enrollment program to teach pre-calculus as a dual credit course at Agones.
Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. On-ramps is a dual credit program. It's coordinated by the University of Texas in Austin. It does combine pedagogy, curriculum, and technology, and it provides a University of Texas experience to all our high school students and community college students throughout the state of Texas. On-ramps courses feature face-to-face classroom instruction, and they also have an online module for activities to support learning outside of the classroom. Each on-ramps course aligns with an existing equivalent course at the University of Texas at Austin. On-ramps also prepares teachers from across the state of Texas to facilitate the instruction in their classrooms, and it's designed to accelerate student success. Teachers are paired with staff at the university on a one-to-one support basis. During the 2020-21 school year, the fee will be $249 or $199 per student per course. That is subsidized for any student who meet the reduced lunch program. This is a renewal. This is an MOU that comes before you. It's been several years now. It's very successful. So at this time, are there any questions?
Question from board members? Ms. Rutherford.
On the on-ramps, and I can't remember, Dr. Rich, you can help me out. The on-ramps kind of dual credit, the student towards the end has to decide whether or not to take the college credit or just the high school credit. Those are some of the ones that fall under on-ramps?
Yes, sir. That's exactly, that is the only one that has that option.
Okay.
Yes.
And because I know a couple years when we first started, we had some stuff with that. So our counselors who enroll our students in the on-ramps, they do explain to those students that at the end, you're going to have to choose whether or not to take the college credit or not there. Yes.
Yeah, the counselors explain that to them, but more importantly, the teacher is well trained and the teacher has those constant reminders with the students. So yeah, the students are aware by the end of the year of what they're going to do.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No questions asked. Any further questions? We'll go to the recommendation, please.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the superintendent to sign the on-ramps cooperative program agreement and data sharing agreement with the University of Texas at Austin.
You've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion for approval? Mr. Orfeld, seconded by Amy Haynes. All those in favor? Ms. Gonzalez? Favor? Myself in favor. Mrs. Webb? In favor. Amy Haynes? In favor. Mr. Orfeld? In favor. Motion's approved. Thank you, Ida.
Thank you, Mr. Winston Board.
On to business and finance. Consideration to approve surrendering District Police Unit 3 to the insurance carrier, Amy Childers.
Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, members of the board. On April 11th, 2020, a hailstorm causing damage occurred in Del Rio, Valverde County. District Police Unit Number 3 sustained excessive damage, rendering the vehicle unsafe and unusable. CISD Claims Adjuster has determined the vehicle to be a total loss, and the district will be compensated the actual cash value of $9,849 less the $1,000 deductible for a total of $8,849 once the vehicle is surrendered. If retained by the district, we would keep the unit number 3 with a salvage title and the actual cash value of $6,241 less the $1,000 deductible for a total cash of $5,241. Due to the risk and liability of continuing usage, surrendering the vehicle is the safer option. Right?
Questions from board members? Just for informational purposes, Amy, do you know what year that vehicle is?
No, sir, I do not.
So it's okay.
You pulled it all those in the hallway. I could ask him.
It's okay. I mean, if it's worth $9,000, I'm sure it's not a,
It's not one of the new ones we purchased.
okay, recommendation, I guess.
Yes, sir. It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve surrendering District Police Unit Number 3 with VIN number ending in 180 to TASB and be compensated $8,849.
Got the recommendation?
It's a 2014 vehicle, sir.
2014?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
It's only
Thank
6
you.
years old.
With about 300,000 miles. You've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion for approval? Okay, motion made by Ms. Gonzalez, seconded by Amy Haynes. All those in favor, Ms. Gonzalez, in favor, myself in favor. Ms. Webb, in favor. Amy Haynes, in favor, and Mr. Orfeld. Motion's carried. Motion is approved. Thank you very much. We go on to item 13B, Valverde Appraisal District Resolution to amend 2020 budget by retaining surplus funds for 2019. Amy Childress.
Good evening once again. The Valverde Appraisal District proposed budget amendment is to retain $89,501.88 of the 2019 budget surplus and add it to the line item for litigation services. The San Felipe Del Rio CISD portion of this surplus is $40,172.29. The governing bodies have 30 days, which would be until August 16th, 2020, to approve or disapprove the resolution from the Valverde County Appraisal District. And the resolution is attached under separate cover.
So Dr. Rios, you want to explain? I mean, normally we don't, if we don't take action, it goes anyway. I mean, it's approved anyway. But I think all the entities have agreed to put that surplus fund for the cases that we have pending.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and really what in the past we have planned on adding additional money from our budget, and we didn't have to. So the fact that they're just asking to retain the budget, I think it's an appropriate recommendation, and I'd encourage the board to approve it.
I'm glad that they have a budget and they have a surplus at the end of the year, so that's a plus. Any questions from board members? Any other questions? You want to make the motion, the recommendation, please?
Yes, sir. It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the resolution submitted by the Valverde Appraisal District to amend the 2020 budget by retaining surplus funds from 2019.
And you heard the recommendation from administration. Is there a motion for approval? Motion by Mrs. Webb. Is there a second to the motion? Mr. Orfeld. All those in favor? Diana Gonzalez. In favor. Myself in favor. Mrs. Webb. In favor. Amy Haynes. In favor. Mr. Orfeld. In favor. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir.
Mesa,
Yes.
on the amendment on D, I believe that Sandra mentioned that the election was on November 4th instead of the 3rd.
Third. She mentioned the third.
You mentioned the 3rd, okay, just clarifying.
Yes.
Thank
Yes. Going to human resources, consideration to approve employee job descriptions and evaluation forms for coordinator, health services, accountant, curriculum instruction specialist, Ida Garcia.
Yes, good
Mr. Mesa,
evening.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mesa, before Ade goes on with the presentation, I just want to mention that you're not approving the positions until you approve the funding for the positions. I know that there's discussion and I know that we need to keep talking, but today we're simply asking that you approve the job description and evaluation forms. Approving, allowing us to actually hire somebody for those positions wouldn't come until after you approve the budget. So I don't want anybody to think that we have the discussion and already plan to have it approved. This is just approving the paperwork. The actual approval wouldn't come until 18 days from now, or 14, the budget hearing.
Well, thank you for explaining that. And I guess, Ms. Webb, you have a question?
Well, I have a concern with the curriculum and instruction specialist. So I want a motion that we table that until either it's corrected. I don't want to approve something or look at something that is incorrect. And right now, by saying curriculum and instruction specialist, that indicates to me someone with a master's degree in the area of curriculum and instruction. It doesn't say a teacher, it doesn't say anything like that. So
I'll change it to, I'll change the title and we'll note it in the recommendation to instructional document specialist. Or another title that you suggest. I don't want to delay this if we don't have to. So would instructional document specialist work, or what would you like it? I'm okay with it.
well, my concern is that we don't need to have create positions. We need to change the paradigm of what we're doing. We don't necessarily have to change positions. My concern is that not knowing what we're coming into next year. Yes, I understand we had 2 individuals that assisted this summer with curriculum, etc. And they're probably going to be the ones that will get the position if it's posted and they apply, which to me is, if we have individuals right now on the campuses, which we already know we're going to have individuals that will be what we call extra individuals because not all students are coming back. If we want to use those same individuals that were used during the summer to help this year with the online instruction, that's a different scenario. But I don't feel that we need to approve something or advertise something when we're not exactly sure right now, other than getting extra positions in CNI. That's my main concern. One, it's not correctly stated in the first place, because we're not asking for people that are exactly qualified. We're looking for people that helped during the summer with curriculum and were doing something that they were instructed to do. But are they individuals that know the curriculum and know instructional design, have worked with online curriculum, the implementation of the curriculum online? That is not stated on there. So there would have to be rewording if, in the fact that we would open up the position. So I'm asking that, I'm making a motion that it be tabled. If we need to bring it back on Monday, that's a different story. Or maybe after closed session. I don't know. But I don't see it as correct the way it is right now. I don't know how other members feel.
Well, I just want to say that these are documents like the job description and evaluation forms. The name could change, like Dr. Rios mentioned. But you have a motion before the floor. Is there a second to the motion to delay this, postpone? Ms. Gonzalez? Second motion to delay this. Okay, postpone. If there's a motion and a second, all those in favor, Ms. Gonzalez, to postpone this item? You want to postpone this item, Ms. Webb? Is that what you mentioned? Okay. Ms. Gonzalez? In favor? Okay. I'm not in favor. Ms. Webb? In favor? Any hands? Not in favor. Mr. Orfeld? Not in favor. Okay, so we go on to the original question again. what we have before us is consideration to approve only the employee job description and evaluation forms for health coordinator, accountant, curriculum instruction specialist, to name the change. And the recommendation from administration.
It is the recommendation of administration that the Board of Trustees approve the employee job description and evaluation forms as presented.
You've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion for approval? Mr. Orfeld, seconded by Amy Haynes. All those in favor? Ms. Gonzalez? Ms. Gonzalez?
Is that for all of them or just for that one? The curriculum instruction? Or we got all of them?
Yeah.
Okay,
In favor?
yes.
Okay, myself in favor. Ms. Webb? No?
All of them are included in there, no?
Okay. I didn't hear you.
No.
Oh, Amy Haynes? In favor? Mr. Orfeld? In favor. Motion passes. Thank you. Next item under Human Resources, consideration to approve the 2020-2021 district compensation plans. Ate Garcia.
Yes, President Mesa, and on this one, I will seek guidance from Dr. Rios because as he mentioned, these positions will not be approved until the budget is approved. They are included in the compensation pay plan, Dr. Rios. So how do you want us to move forward?
We need to remove them from the compensation pay plan. I'm interested in having the board approve the return to work stipend and the other items that you mentioned. These positions are still dependent on actual funding when the budget is approved. So the recommendation should indicate the compensation pay plan as presented, with the exception of those three positions and read them by name. Or if you want, I can read the recommendation, ma'am.
I also need to include the payout stipend, the return to work stipend, make the change to January like you suggested. We had thought December is Christmas, but we can go ahead and change.
Okay, that's fine. Do you want me to read the recommendation or do you want to read it?
I can read it, sir.
Okay, make sure you exclude those three positions that I shared with the board, okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Ready, Mr. Mesa?
Right.
It is the recommendation of administration that the Board of Trustees approve the compensation pay plan except with the accountant position, the coordinator for health services, and curriculum and instruction specialist. We're also going to modify the return to work stipend to be paid out in September and January.
Was that correct, Dr. Hayes?
Perfect.
It does include the two specialists.
No, it does not include the two specialists, and it does not include the accountant, and it does not include the health services coordinator.
Okay.
And it changes the payout. In other words, teachers will get half of their return to work stipend in one lump sum in September, and then when they return for the second semester, they'll get the second lump sum in January.
Yes, I heard that. Okay. If you heard the recommendation from administration, is there a motion for approval? Motion by Mr. Orfeld, seconded by Amy Haynes. All those in favor, Ms. Gonzalez? In favor? Myself in favor. Ms. Webb? In favor. Amy Haynes? In favor. Mr. Orfeld? In favor. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We're now going to go into executive session. We're permitted to go into executive session by sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.073, and 551.074, 551.076, 551.082, 551.084, and 551.087 of the Government Code, Texas Open Meetings Act. If a final vote is required, it will be taken upon reconvening into open session. The time is 7:51. We're now in executive session. Okay, the time is 8:43 p.m. We're going to reconvene into open session. No action was taken in executive session. We're down to item 18 on our agenda. 18A, consideration to approve the personnel report to include the following: new hires, district vacancies, retirements and resignations. Ade Garcia.
Yes, good evening again. It is the recommendation of administration that the Board of Trustees approve the following new personnel. Third grade teacher at Buena Vista Elementary, Maria Vasquez. First grade teacher at Dr. Lonnie Green Elementary, Christina Campos. Fourth grade teacher at Dr. Lonnie Green Elementary, Samantha Farmer. Fifth grade teacher at Dr. Fermin Calderon, Octavio Ortiz. Special education teacher at North Heights Elementary, Veronica Enriquez. Fourth grade teacher at Ruben Chavira Elementary, Crystal Cardenas. Fourth grade teacher at Buena Vista Elementary, Carissa Madera. Fifth grade teacher at Dr. Fermin Calderon, Joanne Buenrostro. Second grade teacher at Dr. Fermin Calderon, Belinda Gallegos. Fifth grade teacher at North Heights Elementary, Isabella Chavarria. Fourth grade teacher at Ruben Chavira Elementary, Lauren DeVries. Fourth grade teacher at Ruben Chavira Elementary, Crystal Cardenas.
With the recommendation from administration, is there a motion for approval? Motion by Ms. Gonzalez, seconded by Amy Haynes. All those in favor, Ms. Gonzalez? Motion, yes. Myself, yes. Linda Webb? Yes. Mr. Orfeld? Yes. And Amy Haynes? Yes. Motion is approved.
Thank you.
Item 18B, consideration to approve the position of assistant principal for North Heights Elementary, Ade Garcia.
Yes, sir. It is the recommendation of administration that the Board of Trustees approve Danielle Castillo as assistant principal at North Heights Elementary.
With the recommendation from administration, is there a motion for approval? Motion by Mrs. Webb, seconded by Ms. Gonzalez. All those in favor, Ms. Gonzalez? In favor, myself in favor, Linda Webb, in favor, Ms. Amy Haynes, in favor, and Mr. Orfeld. In favor, motion carries. Item 18C, consideration to approve the position of health counselor for Dr. Lonnie Green Elementary at Ade Garcia.
It is the recommendation of administration that the Board of Trustees approve Christopher Nuno for the position of health counselor as discussed.
You've heard the recommendation from administration. I will entertain a motion for approval. Motion from Mr. Orfeld. Is there a second to the motion? Amy Haynes. All those in favor? Diana Gonzalez. In favor. Myself in favor. Mrs. Webb. In favor. Amy Haynes. In favor. Mr. Orfeld. In favor. Motion carries. Item 18D, consideration to approve the position of controller for the finance department, Ade Garcia.
It is the recommendation of administration that the Board of Trustees approve the position of comptroller for Mr. Gilbert Sanchez in the finance department.
With the recommendation from the administration, is there a motion for approval? Motion by Ms. Gonzalez. Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Mrs. Webb. All those in favor, Ms. Gonzalez? In favor? Myself in favor. Mrs. Webb? In favor. Amy Haynes? In favor. Mr. Orfeld? In favor. Motion carries unanimously. 18E, consideration to approve the position of budget director for the finance department. Rebecca Garcia.
Yes, sir. It is the recommendation of administration that the Board of Trustees approve Mr. Miguel Salinas as budget director for the finance department.
With the recommendation, is there a motion for approval? Motion by Mr. Overfeld, seconded by Amy Haynes. Johnny Gonzalez in favor, myself in favor, Mrs. Webb in favor, Amy Haynes in favor, Mr. Overfeld. Motion is approved. There being no other items on the agenda, is there a motion for adjournment? Mr. Overfeld, seconded by Amy Haynes. All those in favor, Ms. Gonzalez, favor, myself in favor, Mrs. Webb, Amy Haynes. Overfeld, motion is approved. Thank you all and have a good night. Thank you for being here.